welcome to the Commerce Journey Podcast. My name is Brian Krogsgaard. Got a special guest on with us today, Paul Maiorana from WooCommerce. He's the CEO of WooCommerce these days, but he's been with Woo's parent company, Automatic, for was it a decade, Paul?
A decade, just last month. That's right. December 6th, I believe it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on a long and successful tenure at Automatic.
Thanks.
And you've been in tech for a long time. I think, what is it, the Dow Jones that you were at before that?
I was at Fast Company and Inc. magazines. I was their chief technology officer before coming to Automatic on the VIP team.
Yeah, so you ran the WordPress VIP team, which is like, if y'all know, what is it, 538 or some of the high-end WordPress websites in the world that have to be up. If you were looking at election coverage, then you were visiting, a WordPress website.
You were probably on a VIP site.
Yeah, it was a WordPress VIP.
Yeah.
So Paul, you were like instrumental to a lot of the VIP growth that occurred over the years, and then you became the interim CEO of the WooCommerce brand in 2019, and then
that's right,
and then full-time. Or like permanent, whatever CEO
of the WooCommerce. Made it official.
Made it official.
That's right. Yeah,
a year ago.
Just about a year ago. That's right.
Yeah. So a lot of people on the commerce journey side of mine and Corey's ventures, they're not going to have all of the background of WooCommerce. Some of our audience, of course, comes from our other project with Post Status, and they are probably going to know you pretty well. Like you've been in that's like insider WordPress professional people. For the folks on the commerce journey side, WooCommerce has been around for quite a long time, but Automatic acquired the WooCommerce business. And what year was that? Like 2017?
I believe it was 5 years ago, 2016.
Okay, 2016. So 5 years under the umbrella of the broader ecosystem.
Actually, sorry. Might have been the year before.
Was it 2015?
I think it was 2015.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's been a while. So most people, everything they know about WooCommerce is the influence of all things Automatic, WordPress.com, and the way that y'all have kind of evolved the product since its early days. How would you describe WooCommerce as an e-commerce solution to a small business owner or to someone that's like starting their store versus like what they may hear, because there's not near as much like public domain marketing for any of the tools that Automatic makes. So how would you describe it just for like your layman person interested in starting their store?
Yeah, sure. At its core, WooCommerce is a platform for selling online, right? It's a plugin for WordPress. So you get, the web's best content management system, over 30% of the web powered by WordPress. WooCommerce powers 1 in 4 stores. So you bring together a best of breed e-commerce engine with a best of breed kind of content engine, and you have the best of both worlds to, both reach your customers and sell to those customers, but also, through WordPress to kind of market to those customers and bring them into a really deep, like rich experience, as opposed to just being a store kind of off on the side, detached from your core site.
Yeah, I've often thought of WooCommerce, and I did WooCommerce consulting back to 2010, 2011, literally when WooCommerce existed. That's when I started.
It must have been a year or two old at that point.
It was
right?
zero. It was zero. It was 0 years old.
So, nice.
The day that WooCommerce came into existence, I moved a site in development from a different solution and was like, well, I'm going to do this on WooCommerce because I see the people behind it and all that. So I've been following WooCommerce literally forever. Over the years, I started to develop this mindset, and I want to know if this is still true today. So the mindset was cases where it makes a ton of sense to use WooCommerce. One, ultimate customization ability, because like you said, it's not just built for e-commerce. You have all the breadth of the WordPress ecosystem and functionality you may use on a WordPress site. Number 2 was really what I would call more like the bolt-on store. So like, what if a nonprofit also has like a bookstore? You know what I mean? Or something like that, where it's like bolted on to all the functionality that you're using otherwise, but e-commerce may or may not be pivotal to your overall web presence. I imagine that a lot of what's been done over the years is to try to also make it very much a first-class citizen. So if you say, I'm coming here to start an e-commerce store, ta-da, here you go. How has that kind of played into the evolution of WooCommerce?
Yeah, that's a big part of how we think about our kind of mission today, right? Is it's not enough to just make this platform available largely to sort of historically to more technically minded folks or developers who have had a lot of success with WooCommerce. But at the end of the day, many of those developers are building stores for merchants, right? Or merchants want to get up and running on their own, may not necessarily have the budget to go hire some more technical help to set up their store and kind of build out the experience that they want. And our mission is democratizing commerce. That's what we all wake up excited to do every day, right? And if at the end of the day, merchants can't actually run their stores themselves or find difficulty with it or just sort of move on to something that's easier, then we're sort of reducing the freedom of the web, right? If we can't meet their needs as an open source solution and sort of deliver a great experience while also staying true to the ideals that we care about in the open web and owning your own data and building a privacy first platform, then we're going to lose them to our proprietary competitors. And again, that just erodes the overall sort of freedom and free agency of the web. So that's really at the core of everything we do, is that mission around democratizing commerce.
How have you actually seen that translate to some of the growth? Because interestingly with e-commerce, there's been a ton of trends over the years, right? I guess one is merchant processors, payment processors, especially non-standard ones that may have flexibility with their terms of service, like what you can sell or where you can sell it, things like that. Has that been a part of the growth? And then number two might be product categories. What was it? The type of product that was huge. It was a huge trend. It's like totally blanking on me. Not hemp, but CBD.
Oh, CBD. Sure.
Yeah. So
yeah.
the CBD category was this big deal of like whether hosted solutions would allow you to sell those types of products until they finally caved or something. Have those been really big issues in terms of, the type of things y'all are thinking about?
To some degree, there's, I think the decentralized nature of WooCommerce tends to attract people who are selling products and services that are maybe more highly regulated and harder to find like a proprietary or SaaS platform that would allow them to sell those services, let alone then getting to a payment provider who will enable you to sell those services as well, or at least process those transactions at fees that are reasonable, right? There are many people who will take your money, but to process the transaction, no matter what you're selling, but you could be paying upwards of 5 or 10% on a transaction, as opposed to kind of the standard market rates in the US here of around 2.9%, right? So it's certainly something that we keep an eye on. We have a great partnership with Square as one example of a payment processor who has done a very good job of supporting the CBD sellers after some changes in the regulations here in the United States. I guess that was in 2019, I think that was, maybe early 2020. So it's definitely something that we again want to support these businesses, and we know that it's not enough to just make WooCommerce available, right? Even if Woo is decentralized and you can run it yourself or on your own servers, most e-commerce sites are going to have a dependency at least on payments and likely on many other third-party providers as well.
Yeah, so I guess there's a bit of
the industry.
There's a bit of a complex moral relationship in what you consider a moral thing, I guess, versus a regulatory thing. And I know those are different, but in the WordPress landscape, we've always prided ourselves on the morality of it is to democratize publishing, even if sometimes that publishing's not something you personally agree with or whatnot. And same thing could be the case when you're selling things. So democratizing commerce is a similar idea, right? Sometimes that could be used for good. Sometimes it could be used for things that you don't agree with, but your platform enables by its nature.
That's exactly right. And it's a complicated subject, obviously. And you're seeing like it's, certainly been in the news over the last couple of weeks, right? That's certainly not Woo, but just sort of the role that technology platforms play in deciding what, does or does not exist on the internet, right? And there's certainly a lot of nuance to that. But it's hard for me to see people out there using WooCommerce for things that I just find like completely morally repugnant, right? And
Right.
are completely at odds with my own sensibilities and what I value and my principles. But that is the nature of the platform that we're building and the GPL software license that WooCommerce and WordPress use. That that it's the same sort of bill of rights that enable people to use WordPress and WooCommerce for good. Unfortunately, creates the same protections for people who are using it for less desirable purposes. And I think we try to focus on, again, how can we orient this platform and steer it in a direction that people are using it for good.
Yeah. How else would you compare what someone's going to get from WooCommerce versus, if they're comparing or looking at hosted solutions, be it Shopify or BigCommerce or, anything that, you signed up and
Sure.
you're fully using their platform?
Yeah. I think we in the WordPress community I feel like we don't talk enough about kind of the differing needs of different customer segments, right? The value of Woo is going to differ if you're a small business or a micro business compared to a high growth business, or an enterprise, right? Or a higher volume business, I should say. I think for smaller stores, an important differentiator for Woo, in addition to the kind of the flexibility that you mentioned previously, is how inexpensive WordPress and WooCommerce can be. Certainly, if you can spend a lot of money in the WordPress ecosystem. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but that kind of what it takes to get to table stakes, to get a site up and running, and for you to start connecting with your customers and selling, you can do that much less expensively with WooCommerce, or very inexpensively with WooCommerce and WordPress, than you can compared to any of our proprietary competitors. Again, are you going to walk in the door and pay
Yeah.
$30 a month before you've even really had an opportunity to dial in the fundamentals of your business and even understand if you're able to connect with customers and build this into something that's sustainable, right?
Yeah.
So I think for smaller stores, certainly, that's an important consideration, right? It's just the cost of ownership. Certainly for larger stores as well, but I think the real value for larger stores is that flexibility, right? If you look at how Woo compares to, say, Shopify, of course, any brand should expect that the folks that are building their website platform or their e-commerce platform are keeping pace with the evolving trends of the industry, right? That's our job, is to make sure that people don't have to go out and build whatever the kind of newest trend is in e-commerce, that they don't have to go and do it themselves. That's the role that a platform should play, right? Especially in a year like we've had over the past year, where commerce and consumer preferences have changed so dramatically and so quickly. Local pickups or curbside pickups may not have been a thing for your business
Yeah.
a year ago, right?
But
But
now they
a
are.
couple months later, if you weren't providing curbside pickups or local pickups, depending on your industry and type of business, of course, then you weren't doing any business, right? So
Yeah.
that's something that WooCommerce can move quickly on, and again, that's what you should expect of your platform. But I think the challenge for a lot of larger businesses who are built on more proprietary platforms, when you want to invest and kind of build the experience that you want to deliver to your customers, and you hear from your platform provider that, oh, that's like, it's on the roadmap, it's in the backlog, you're stuck, right? But with WooCommerce, you can go beyond what our priorities are and build whatever is specific to the needs of your business. And I think, again, that's something that cuts across really all of our customer segments, but I think especially for larger stores.
Yeah. And there's an extensibility that is inherent to the nature of WooCommerce, whereas take Shopify, for instance, and I think theirs is probably more flexible than some of the other hosted options. They have some apps
Sure.
that you can use and plug in, but
Mm-hmm.
there's always been certain kind of, I don't know, maybe like holy territory. So I know for a long time, it's like, if you wanted to customize the checkout pages on Shopify, it's like, good luck. Whereas throughout
That's
the
right.
WooCommerce experience, you're able to have that control. And you have more and more control the more you're willing to roll up your sleeves and get a little dirty. But the pluggability through the extensions ecosystem and through plugins and then custom plugins, you have the full power of any open source software to override that functionality, and that was always huge.
Yeah, that's right, and that's a big focus for us this year, has been last year as well, as kind of connecting people to the products in our ecosystem getting kind of the right product to the right person at the right time ultimately, right? And I think that's another challenge that the WordPress community has is there's, last time I looked, at least 60,000 plugins in the WordPress plugin directory, right? And even within the WooCommerce directory, we're talking about hundreds of different products to choose from. And I think that's an incredible value that the WordPress ecosystem brings to these stores is that choice, right? I mean, some of our proprietary competitors, you do not have that choice, or at least there's some very strong financial disincentives against choice, right?
Yeah.
Um, uh, but there are also significant challenges around discovery, and that represents onboarding issues, right? As people try to get up and running with Woo, and you've got this uh, you're just 1,000 decisions to make. What am I going to use for payments or shipping or email marketing or any hosting, right?
Yeah.
Is
And you can even
another
have,
decision that's specific to Woo.
and you can even have this concept where different portrayals of WooCommerce could be significantly different, whether it's this host or that host or completely independent or the way the bundles work. You mentioned the affordability on the at the basis. Our sponsor for Commerce Journey, GoDaddy Pro, if you go to commercejourney.com/go, like that WooCommerce sign up, that has an affordability element that's say cheaper than your Shopify experience, but it includes 30 bundled extensions. Of course,
That's right.
then there's also these, scenario, you go to woocommerce.com, you sign up and you choose this extension bundle or individual extensions. WooCommerce, the pricing, the what the extensions you have at the end of the day, they can all be so different between people's experiences.
Yeah.
How do you manage that from an experience standpoint? And then also I'm really curious from a business perspective, like on the partnership standpoint, because you're working with, say, a company like GoDaddy, but you're also providing an independent like lane of travel for customers that's different than GoDaddy's. Like there's
That's right.
very different
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say we have a lot of partners that are also competitors to some degree as well. I mean, even at the highest or highest levels. But I mean, you look at folks like Google and Facebook, right, who are great partners of Woo, but also very clearly are looking to make waves in commerce and own more of that experience themselves, right? So, I think it's the reality is we know that Woo can't operate as an island, right? We need to be working with partners in hosting, marketing partners, payments, right? And it's really sort of the breadth of not just this ecosystem, the WordPress and WooCommerce ecosystem, but sort of WooCommerce ecosystem, but the broader e-commerce ecosystem, right? Is really, we need to help our customers reach, or our merchants reach their customers no matter where they are. And these partnerships are important to us, right? Hosting, again, can provide, GoDaddy has a really massive customer base and a high profile. And if they can help bring people onto WooCommerce, that makes the web more open and delivers more freedom to more people than what Woo can do on its own, right? So we do take a very ecosystem first kind of approach to our product strategy. So we see these partnerships as really critical to the mission, but also does not mean that we're not doing our own work to help people on board to Woo more easily and just deliver a much better and more modern kind of streamlined experience. So that's what people expect.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is another one that's complex. How do you approach product planning when you might know like someone could be onboarding from all these different avenues, right? Like so GoDaddy may have a custom onboarding thing, or someone could be installing WooCommerce into an existing site, or someone could be like WooCommerce is the reason they created the site, so it's the first thing they do. You have all these different entry points and all these different like new user experiences. How do you pull all that together in terms of how you, not only how you onboard, but how you product plan in general?
Yeah, it's certainly something we have to be very thoughtful about. And I think we relaunched our onboarding last year, and I think it does a much better job of accounting for the differences in businesses, right? Is somebody migrating from another platform? Are they setting the store up from scratch? Do they have an existing business of like physical location, right, and are now moving online? That really changes the kind of considerations you're making in setting up your store, right? Uh, so it's something that, to some degree, it's just kind of standard product development, right? And we need to be very attuned to that. But I think, kind of in relation to your question about how we work with partners as well, that's one of the great opportunities of partnering with folks like GoDaddy and others, is they have their own sort of unique perspective on what a great onboarding experience should look like, right? And their own priorities. And we can learn a lot from what they're doing and kind of experimenting with WooCommerce, with their customers. And we are able to share feedback back to our other hosting partners. Our goal, again, is to make WooCommerce the best, most flexible commerce platform on the web, right? So having that feedback from our partners who are reaching different merchant profiles than we might it's critical to our ability to do that.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been noticing, and I want to know how you approach this, is for a long time you go to I don't know what site. Let's make one up. Let's say mywidgets.com, and that's the shopping experience. Someone checks out, they get it delivered, they're done. That was the commerce experience. Now seems to be a much more broad customer engagement process, right? Like, you could reach them through organic search. You could reach them through social channels. Maybe they buy directly through a social channel. You could reach them through email marketing. You could do retargeting. You could do ad-based. Like, there's all these ways of getting to a store, also of checking out, also of closing the deal, like maybe a abandoned cart, or, like some of all these different mechanisms that stores are using to reach their customers. How do you decide here's where WooCommerce fits in, right? Like, are you trying to touch all of these? Are you trying to connect? Are you trying to absorb and offer a solution that's, fully wrapped around all of that? How do you see yourself?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say, I think what WordPress and WooCommerce are really great at is being that, what I used to call in sort of my VIP days, the digital hub of someone's sort of world, right? These days, maybe think of it more as that like system of record,
Mm-hmm.
So as you're selling on these other platforms or across, different communities, WordPress and Woo make it really easy to pull that information back in, right? So you can, have all of your customer information in one place, your orders in one place, do all of your accounting out of a single data source, right? Fulfill all of your orders out of a single workflow. And so that's sort of somewhat of a guiding philosophy of how we think about which parts of the product experience are really important to have like deeply integrated into WooCommerce. Ownership is, less important to us. It's more of like, what is that experience like, right? And can we pull that data back in and again, provide freedom and sort of break the handcuffs off of some of this data by pulling it into an open platform.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about specifically, and this is something I've, when I was purely in the WordPress landscape, I was less aware. As I've gotten more to understand especially professional e-commerce, but really once someone's kind of getting serious, omnichannel becomes a huge deal. How are y'all handling or integrating for omnichannel experiences? The biggest, like, obvious elephant in the room always is Amazon. So I'm selling on my store, but I'm also in Amazon. What's the omnichannel experience look like with WooCommerce?
Yeah, it's largely something that has been filled by the third-party developer ecosystem at the moment. So there are myriad ways to connect your WooCommerce store to Amazon, and we have at least one, maybe more, in the WooCommerce marketplace. So, again, we think that's really important. People need to be able to reach their customers wherever they are. But again, it's also just as important to pull that data back into your own system so that you own it. And, we certainly are doing a lot of work around omnichannel as well. Google and Facebook, again, I think most people don't necessarily think of as like an Amazon style marketplace. It's not a channel in that regard necessarily, but again, having a presence in these channels is critically important.
Like that shopping
Instagram tab as well, right?
I think I don't think about that too often, but I imagine if you're not in Google Shopping or whatever their index is, you're probably not at the top of the carousel on search, or you're not certainly not in that tab when you click over to it, things like that, huh?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, we certainly, there's kind of the traditional marketplaces, Amazon, eBay, Etsy, right? And again, there are solutions available for pretty much any marketplace that you can think of, and to connect your Woo store to those marketplaces. And then we do have some kind of more official solutions that the WooCommerce team owns as well.
What do you see as your biggest challenge for WooCommerce at the moment? Like, what's the not what keeps you up at night, but like you wake up and this is going to be part of what you work on today?
Yeah, that's a great question. Certainly team building. Woo is growing incredibly well. We did $21 billion in total payments volume in 2020. That was about 75% growth over 2019.
Wow.
And we need to build this team to keep pace with our customers and to continue supporting them and delivering just, again, a great commerce experience. That's a big part of what I get up thinking about every day. But also, I think from a merchant's perspective, what we really need to get right as the WordPress community, and not really specific to Woo, is the kind of peace of mind in operating your site. We've all had a plugin update go sideways, or a core update go sideways on us, or something that maybe even a hosting issue that was sort of out of our control that has taken a site down. And those things happen in any scenario, right? Whether it's a proprietary platform or something you're hosting yourself or whatever. But we make it relatively easy as a community for people to shoot themselves in the foot. And I think if you're running a store, again, you can't sell to people if your store is down. So we need to make sure that people have access to kind of the tools and best practices they need to run a resilient storefront. And and we've talked about VIP previously. I know better than most what WordPress's capabilities are, right? Like WordPress can scale and WooCommerce can scale, and it's not that hard to run a store with peace of mind, right?
That was one of those things that I think for a long time people were like, once you get to this point, WooCommerce is kind of off the table.
Right.
It's a great problem to have, but it can become a problem for a store owner. It doesn't matter what platform, you have to fulfill orders, right? So
right.
say you move from I get 10 orders a day to I get 1,000 orders a day. How
Sure.
has the platform evolved, and like what's that like now for someone
Sure.
to have this dashboard of I have 1,000 orders a day? Oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
what do we do?
Yeah, Woo can handle that no problem. I think of course, I'm sure there's some theoretical limit, right? And we certainly have talked to some folks who have hit like a real limit, right? But it's not with WordPress and it's not with WooCommerce, but it is, again, this just as well as I do. It's custom code, it's plugins that maybe were never meant to work together or operate together properly, right? You just have to be thoughtful about the way that you're building your store. And like the capabilities are there, right? But again, we make it relatively easy for people to just throw another plugin on their site, and without the proper sort of gate checks in place to make sure that someone has reviewed that properly, right? And that it will play nicely with the rest of the plugins on your site. So there's a lot more we need to do as a community there. There's attention in what people love about Woo and WordPress, which is that it gives, again, it's democratizing. It gives people free agency over their storefronts without any technical know-how. But for the same reason, again, you can make mistakes.
Yeah, with great power comes great responsibility has always been one of my like phrases for people with self-hosted websites. And
it was
control.
a big part of my pitch deck in my VIP days.
Yeah,
use that quite liberally. Yeah.
What advice would you have for somebody, let's say they're in the first 3, 6, 12 months of their store. They're not like fully off the ground. Maybe they're even in this like decision zone. Like they're not so deep that they can't like change the way they're going, like the way they're running their store, making decisions, putting their store together. What kind of advice do you have for that type of store owner?
Yeah. I guess I would say experiment a lot, right? I think many people try, they get their site built out and then nothing happens. And they assume it was a bad idea, it was a bad product, a bad service or whatever. And, this is even sort of ignoring, you know, sort of the fundamentals of like marketing, right? Just assume that this relatively novice person, right? But just, I think we see too many people get to that point and then again decide to just move on, when the reality is it could take takes a lot of effort often to dial in with that. Oh, I don't know. Am I frozen? Are you still getting me?
Yeah, you're here. It's just me
Oh,
that's
sorry.
frozen.
Okay. Yeah, you frozen. I was worried you weren't hearing me.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. Maybe I should start that over.
No, you're good. You're good.
What was the question?
So the advice for that newer store owner.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So my advice would be to just to experiment. We see a lot of folks who, I think, seem to be excited about starting a store, and then no customers arrive, right? And I think the reality is that there's rarely a magic bullet there, and you need to try to connect with an audience in unique ways and stand out. And so I think folks maybe spend a little too much time thinking about what is the on-site product experience. Is their logo in the right spot? Is everything pixel perfect? For the most part, most of these things don't matter. It's a little kind of premature optimization, right? Focus on reaching your customers, on marketing, and again, kind of just connecting with the communities.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I'm going to finish with this. This is a little different because I know it fits into this partnerships idea. Right now, if I go to WooCommerce.com, and sometimes I do this, I go to WooCommerce.com/pricing just to see what's there. For what it's worth, it redirects to an image right now.
I was gonna say.
So like, yeah, when I go to WooCommerce, when I go to most websites where I consider it like an app or something or a SaaS, I expect there's going to be a page where it says, "Hey, this is $29 a month, and here's what I get." With WooCommerce, to this day, you basically get started, and it's like, here's a bunch of stuff. So my question is WooCommerce.com a starting point truly, or should it be, or what is the starting point? Is it going to GoDaddy, signing up for GoDaddy, adding WooCommerce? Is it going to WordPress.org or WordPress.com, getting started? What's the starting point, and how do I settle this for someone that just wants the basics of like, what should I expect trying to get started?
Yeah. I would say, so, in a very literal sense today, the starting points are you either, they're coming to WooCommerce or the WordPress directory, or you already have a WordPress, right? I mean, potentially a web host as well, right? Yeah. But I would say in that case, you're starting at Google, right?
Yeah.
And kind of following the thread. We know we need to do a better job there. I don't know. Your listeners, I'm sure, are not familiar with this, but we do, everybody who works at Automatic and WooCommerce, we do customer support for your first 2 weeks when you join the company, and then annually, right?
Yeah.
And that is probably the most popular question that I see when I tend to like to do the pre-sales support, because it's just a great kind of lens through which to look at the customer's experience. And many of those questions, like the pattern is, what do I need to spend to get up and running with Woo? And the answer is, it's a little bit of a choose your own adventure, and that's not good enough, And that's a challenge that we have as a business that we're focused on resolving this year. There's always going to be that kind of a la carte nature of WooCommerce, right? That is core to kind of the DNA of the WordPress ecosystem. And that's not something that we'll certainly not move away from, right? But we need to make it a lot easier for people to understand what the cost of ownership of a WooCommerce store is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And for our Commerce Journey only listeners, you should know that's a little bit of a trick question, because on the WordPress side, I'm more of like a analyst hat there. So it's more of a challenge to WooCommerce, which I love, obviously, as a platform. But I run into this sometimes if I'm telling someone, hey, get started. It's why, for what it's worth, on this side, would love to say, like, just go to this URL, and it's like GoDaddy Pro. They know that. They figure it out. So that's great from a partnership perspective. But there's also the people that's like, land on WooCommerce, now what?
That's right.
And being able to settle that for someone, you kind of got at it earlier, which I thought was fascinating, because you can almost start a WooCommerce site for free. Like, if you know how to host something yourself, or you get like $1 hosting, you can put WooCommerce on it, and you don't have to run any extensions. And then it's choose your own adventure from there. our world is so accustomed to the SaaSification of everything, though. Like, it's almost like they want you to say, no, how many dollars is this like monthly?
That's right. Yeah, and I get that. I do that too, right? When I want to know before I'm going to put my credit card in, like, what is
Yeah.
this? What am I signing up for here, right?
Yeah.
So we get it, and that's, again, it's a focus for us this year for sure.
Awesome. All right. What do you want to leave us with? What do you have? Plug something.
Oh, geez. I guess I'll plug WooCommerce Payments. We released initial version of that last year, and I think it's one of the most compelling things that we're working on to bring payments right into your dashboard, a single account. You don't have, multiple vendors pointing fingers at each other. It's Woo's fault, PayPal's fault, or whatever it is, right? It's all made from the folks that made by rather the folks that make WooCommerce, and it's intended to be the best payments experience for Woo.
Awesome. So it just takes one more decision out of the process. You're good to go with your WooCommerce
Exactly
account.
right.
I love that.
That's right.
Paul, thanks so much for being with us. We got to go.
Thanks for having me.
It was awesome to talk to you again. It's been a while since we had a chance to catch up, but I'm glad we were able to today. If everybody enjoyed this, subscribe to All Things Commerce Journey. Go to commercejourney.com and check it out. Go to commercejourney.com/go to check out, get started with your WooCommerce store today. You can find Paul at woocommerce.com, or we'll link his social media and all that stuff in the comments. Thanks for being here. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good day.